In Social 20 today, we're going to talk about the choices people have to make when affirming their nationalist loyalties. And we're doing this so we can understand how competing loyalties will interact with each other. So, at some point, most people will take some sort of action affirming their national loyalty. You could wear a Canadian pin while traveling, or sew a patch to your backpack. You could go participate in Canada Day events, waving flags. You could stand to sing the national anthem or take your hat off. You could simply talk about the reasons you think Canada is a good place to live. All of these are affirming loyalty to Canada in some way. And people will do these for different nations in many of the same ways, actually, across the world. But there are also other ways that national loyalties can be affirmed. For the First Nations in 1982, they chose to affirm their national loyalty simply by affirming their status as nations. So they restructured an organization called the National Indian Brotherhood, which linked all of the First Nations together, and renamed it the Assembly of First Nations, intentionally modeling it off of the United Nations. And what that does, simply even changing the name, let alone restructuring it, indicates a particular way of looking at the First Nations, namely that they saw themselves as being groups of unified people, as being nations rather than just ethnicities within the bigger state of Canada, and that it was important to project that outwards to other people within Canada as well. And part of the reason to do this is because that allows them to affirm that when they deal with the Canadian government, they are not just talking to the government, they are dealing with the government of another nation. That there is a nation to nation relationship between the First Nations and the Canadian government that had been laid down first by the treaties that had been signed and trying to reaffirm the original spirit of those treaties. For Canada, Canada is a multicultural society. And that also means that we practice something called cultural pluralism. Plural, of course, means many, multiple. So cultural pluralism means that we encourage the collective to promote their unique cultural identities, that you do not necessarily have to set aside where you came from or where your family came from when you come to Canada. That assimilation is not necessarily the entire game. It is part of it. There are values that we do insist upon, and laws we insist people value. But a Canadian value as part of our existence as a civic nation that we try to promote is this cultural pluralism. Now, this is not without controversy, and part of this comes from Canada being a bilingual nation and privileging French and English above all others, but part of it simply comes from different culture groups interacting with each other. So there is a debate about to what extent should we be a pluralistic nation, and there are some people who feel we should be more pluralistic and it's a good thing, and there's some people who feel no, we should be less pluralistic and it's a bad thing. How far should we go to accommodate and protect the rights of minorities within our nation? Opinions are divided. I'm not going to give you my opinion because this is a complex topic, and above and beyond my usual wanting to stay neutral, I don't want to spend the next half an hour talking about it and not give a straight answer. But I am going to give you the opinions of two other people. So first we have George Jonas. He's writing this in a book called The Great Questions of Canada. One result from the multicultural model was the retreat from the principle that immigration should serve the interests of the host country first. The host country came to be viewed less and less as a nation, a legitimate entity with its own culture, and more as a political framework for various coexisting cultures. Newcomers were expected not to regard themselves as immigrants seeking to fit, but explorers, if not conquistadors, whose quest was to carve out a congenial niche in Canada for their own tribes, languages, customs, or religions. So, in Jonas's point of view, multiculturalism undermines the existence of the nation. It fractures people into smaller and smaller groups, and there is no unified culture to create a true nation. Here is a different point of view from John Ibbotson, who writes for the Globe and Mail. What matters about the Canadian mythical self-image is that we finally have one, that after years of muddle and confusion, a picture of Canada emerged in the minds of Canadians, a picture of tolerance and diversity and creativity and good humor. That makes Canadians feel, on most days, good about themselves. This is something that, until recently, we lacked. It is, in some countries, it is called patriotism. It feels good. So Ibbotson's point of view is he doesn't really see a paradox between multiculturalism and nationalism, that the embracing of many different people and many different cultures and languages and religions can be the unifying factor amongst Canadians, that it is a value that we've decided on, and if it makes Canadians feel good about themselves, yeah, it does unify people. So, many opinions on the multiculturalism debate. I will actually say that I had entire classes about multiculturalism in Canada when I was training to be a teacher at university. So, it's not going to be a simple thing to resolve, but do think about it. Here's Canadian citizenship oath. I swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. Does that oath leave room for people to have their own cultures and traditions? Does that oath require people to reject other nationalist loyalties? Should it require people to reject other nationalist loyalties? Or is there a way to reconcile your loyalties with one another? Many different people have many different points of view on that. Think about it for yourself. Where do you fall?